News on the 28th of June. Russian snipers covered up the special forces and destroyed the enemy in the LPR. Snipers of the Central Military District covered the actions of a special purpose group during the capture of an enemy stronghold in the Krasnolomensky direction, the Defense Ministry told RIA Novosti. Having received the task, the sniper pair secretly moved to the area of the combat mission. Upon arrival, the servicemen determined the likely approaches to the stronghold and the number of personnel. After waiting for the action of the group, snipers from rifles suppressed the firing points and machine gun calculation of the enemy, thereby ensuring the approach of the group. In addition, the servicemen prevented the approach of enemy reinforcements. After completing the combat mission, the snipers moved to the evacuation point, the Defense Ministry said. Next news. The NATO Secretary-General said that Chuvka, Wagner will be monitored in Belarus. NATO will monitor the movements of Chuka Wagner in Belarus to ensure the security of the alliance member states, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said after an informal dinner in The Hague. The event was attended by heads of state and government of a number of countries, including the president of neighboring Belarus and Lithuania Gitanas Nausėda. As for the consequences of Prigozhin's move to Belarus, the probable redeployment of part of his forces, then it's too early to talk about it. But we will monitor and ensure the ability to protect each ally on an ongoing basis, especially those countries that border Belarus. This was discussed during the dinner, Stoltenberg said. Next news. Aerial bombs were dropped on the Orkhovsky direction, Rogov said. Aviation bombs were dropped on the places of concentration of the criminal code of troops in the Orkhovsky direction in the Zaporozhye region, the head of the Zaporozhye public movement We Are Together with Russia, Vladimir Rogov, told RIA Novosti. On Tuesday, Rogov reported that heavy fighting continues on the Zaporozhye front. The criminal code troops are trying to advance for a while in the Ukrainian salient, and also went on a new offensive near the settlement of Rabotina in the Orkhovsky direction. Our tactical aviation has worked out and dropped aerial bombs on the places of concentration of troops and the concentration of their heavy equipment in the Orkhovsky direction, Rogov said. Next news. Stoltenberg said that Russia should not be underestimated. Recent events in Russia have confirmed that it cannot be underestimated, NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said, calling on alliance members to support Ukraine even more and strengthen collective defense. We have all seen the events in Russia in recent days. These are internal Russian affairs, but it is obvious that illegal aggression against Ukraine created new tensions in Russia. At the same time, we should not underestimate Russia, Stoltenberg said at a press conference in The Hague. The NATO Secretary-General added that in light of recent events, it is even more important to continue to support Ukraine, as well as strengthen collective defense and deterrence. Next news. Ukraine was invited only to the field of the NATO summit, Kuleba complained. Ukraine has received an invitation to take part only in a meeting on the sidelines of the July NATO summit in Vilnius, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba said in an interview with CNN. We received an invitation, but not to the summit itself, but to take part in the NATO-Ukraine Council, which will be held on the sidelines of the summit, he said. He complained about the lack of an unambiguous position in NATO regarding Ukraine's membership. Next news. Prigozhin refused his demands after the talks, Lukashenko said. President of Belarus Alexander Lukashenko said that the head of the Wagner PMCS, Yevgeny Prigozhin, refused his initial demands during the negotiations, including to hand over Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation Valery Gerasimov. He told me, Alexander Grigorievich, I will not demand from the president that he give Shoigu and Gerasimov, and I will not even ask for a meeting. I'm talking. Well, that's good. This is a very good step. It is not necessary in this situation, straining the situation, to demand unenforceable, the words of Lukashenko and the Sputnik Belarus news agency are quoted. The next condition, Lukashenko said, which both sides agreed to fulfill, is to stop the further movement of the Chuvka Wagner column to Moscow. Next news. Biden said that China has enormous problems. U.S. President Joe Biden said that China has enormous problems, but did not go into details, the White House journalistic pool reports. Biden then switched to China and said that the country has enormous problems, but added that he would not go into details. The pool quotes excerpts from his speech at campaign fundraising events. Speaking about China's problems earlier, Biden usually had in mind economic difficulties. Next news. Zolotov told about the actions of the Rosgvardia during the mutiny. The head of the Rosgvardia, Viktor Zolotov, explained why during the events of the 24th of June, the rebels managed to overcome a long distance and it was decided to concentrate all forces on the approaches to Moscow. Very simple. At that stage, we concentrated all our fists, all our forces precisely on the approaches to Moscow, because if you scatter the groupings, but they would just go through them like a knife through butter. Therefore, it was necessary to concentrate the fist to repel, which was actually done, he told reporters when asked how to explain the fact that the rebels had traveled so quickly a long distance from Kinship-on-Don. Next news. Wagner will not guard nuclear weapons in Belarus, Lukashenko assured. Fighters from Chuka, Wagner will not guard nuclear weapons in Belarus, President of the Republic Alexander Lukashenko said on Tuesday at the ceremony of awarding shoulder straps to senior officers. Poles and others believe that Wagner will guard nuclear weapons and so on. Wagner will not guard any nuclear weapons. They will be guarded there, and they are being guarded today, since I won't say how many nuclear weapons already, most of them have been imported to Belarus. Russians and Belarusians are guarding, Sputnik news agency quotes Lukashenko as saying. Next news. The NATO Secretary-General will have his powers extended for a year, the media writes. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, whose powers expire in September, is likely to remain for another year, the publication Urod Steve reported on Tuesday, citing diplomatic sources in the alliance. According to his family Steve, his mandate will probably be extended on Wednesday, the 28th of June, the report says. The reason for the next extension of Stoltenberg's powers, according to the sources of the publication, was the lack of consensus on the candidacy of the new Secretary-General and the difficult situation in Ukraine, to which the alliance countries provide unprecedented military assistance. Next news. The media in Russia proposed to limit the prices of domestic cars. The National Union for the Protection of Consumer Rights has proposed to set a maximum surcharge to the cost of Russian cars, the Izvestia newspaper writes with reference to the relevant documents sent to the government. For car dealerships, the marginal premium to the manufacturer's cost should not exceed 15%. With such an initiative, the National Union for Consumer Rights Protection addressed Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, the article says. According to the letter, the maximum prices for Russian cars will reduce the final cost of cars, which is also affected by high rates of car loans, false advertising and imposed services.